Electric cars halve in value after just 2 years. Electric vehicles, EVs, are losing more than half their value in the first 2 years of ownership amid a wave of heavy discounting by car makers. A typical EV now retains only 49% of its value after 24 months, a sharp decline from 83% as recently as 2022, according to Cox Automotive. Well, the reason that it was 83% in 2022 is because the manufacturers and the dealers were pretending there was a big waiting list, and they were creating a shortage of vehicles when there wasn't a shortage of vehicles. They were registering them, pretending they were being bought by actual customers, and then parking them up on airfields and places like that. So what they actually did was steal money off the poor smokes who went and actually bought an EV thinking that they were good value and that they would retain the value. They stole money from them. They mugged you. And the thing is now that these people who got mugged don't want to admit it, and they've actually become, it's almost like Stockholm Syndrome, where the hostages build empathy for the people who've taken them hostage. The EV people who bought these vehicles can't believe that there were such mugs and can't believe how much money they've lost. So they actually, if anybody points it out to them, they jump down the throat and start calling them names and say you need educating. It's not them that needed educating. It's not them that needed to do the homework when they bought it. It's not them that needed to think, are they really selling all those EVs at full up money? Why? You know, they're very little range. They're not as good as a petrol or diesel, and they're not as easy to use as a petrol or diesel. It takes me a whole lot longer to charge the vehicle. You know, they never questioned stuff like that. They just went out and shelled the money out. And now we find out these vehicles are still coming up for sale. These that were sold at that time, these that the people were told, oh, you'll not get one of these for 2 years. There's a big long waiting list. All gone. Sorry, Mr. Jones. Hey, I can sell you an ICE vehicle if you want, but who wants ICE vehicles? Barrie, Crampton. For a new car bought for $40,000, this would translate to a value of just £19,600 after 2 years. The depreciation figure compares with an average of 70% for diesel and petrol cars. Just let that sink in. 21%. 21%. Electric cars depreciate the quickest. Cox Automotive said the faster rate of depreciation amongst nearly new EVs was being driven by the discount wars being fought by manufacturers, which have been aggressively cutting prices to help them meet net zero sales targets. Under the so-called zero-emission vehicle ZEV rules, which are mandated by the government, 28% of new car sales are meant to be electric this year, with a target set to rise gradually until it reaches 8% in 2030. The fall in value of EVs is also being accelerated by the growing range of cheaper models available on the market. The average price of a second-hand EV fell from £39,849 to £24,908 between April 2022 and April 2025, according to Auto Trader. Philip Northard of Cox Automotive Europe said used car prices reached a peak in 2022 as the pandemic squeezed global supplies of new vehicles. But he added, the current performance of nearly new EVs in the used car market is still much lower than we would anticipate for vehicles in this age profile. The heavy discounts offered on new vehicles mean that consumers can pick up a brand new model for the same price as a nearly new model. Let me just read that again. The heavy discounts offered on new vehicles mean that consumers can pick up a brand new model for the same price as a nearly new model. So who's going to buy a nearly new model? They're not, are they? Hence, you've got to make it attractive. Hence, you've got to make it cheaper. Hence, depreciation. Because you can buy a brand new one cheaper than you can buy a 12-month-old one. So you're going to make the 12-month-old cheaper than the 2-year-old and the 3-year-old. Goes all the way down the line. And we've seen instances recently of even 10-year-old EVs dropping 700 quid in a month. I mean, that's just, and not a big EV, not a big, like, as we'd say, a gas guzzler petrol vehicle, dropping that. A little Nissan Leaf dropping 700 quid. A little Renault Zoe dropping 700 quid. This gives consumers very little incentive to consider them, which is a real blow to a market that needs all the incentives it can get its hands on. Compared with nearly new models, Mr. Northard said that middle-aged EVs between 3 and 5 years old were faring better. These only saw their prices fall by about 15% over a similar period when they were sold at auctions, Mr. Northard said. Brands made price cuts worth $4 billion on new cars last year. It was estimated between 4.5 to 6 billion by the SMMT. $4 billion on new cars last year, equivalent to a discount of about £11,000 per car, according to the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Trade. While discounting is a common practice, the level of discounts on EVs has been higher than those for petrol and diesel, according to Auto Trader. Falling EV values are positive for consumers, but the accelerated drop has become a cause of concern within the car industry. It's not positive for customers. The cheapest vehicles to run are cars that don't depreciate, even second-hand. If there's a low depreciation on a used vehicle, you can get it on a PCP and it'll cost you nothing. If you get a high depreciating vehicle on a PCP, it'll cost you more than a low. So that's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. And I like Philip, but it's rubbish. Fleet operators such as car rental companies, which accounted for 2/3 of all new purchases last year, tend to buy new vehicles and sell them on after 2 to 3 years. The growing drop in resale values mean they risk recovering far less of their initial investment than anticipated. In 2023, the EV leasing firm Onto collapsed into administration as it was forced to write down the value of its 7,000 strong fleet by 21 million in a single year. 21 million, 7,000 divided by 7,000, an average of £3,000 a vehicle. When they say forced to write down, that's not writing down the vehicle because it will already have been written down. It will already have been calculated. That's £3,000 extra per vehicle. And as they were saying, they were losing an average of £2,300 on each car they put through the auction not too long ago. The British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association last year warned that many fleet operators were having to swallow large losses when reselling EVs because of unsustainable depreciation. Now, the good thing was that petrol and diesels performed better. So when they sold the petrol and diesel vehicles, that offset a big chunk of the losses on EVs. So petrol and diesels actually saved them being in a worse position than they would have been. It said rising depreciation costs could force leasing companies to raise prices for consumers in order to better shield lenders from losses. The BVRLA has called for the government to intervene with market stimulus measures, including potentially a VAT cut or grants for used car buyers. Mr. Northard said the used market is a crucial source of profitability for the automotive sector. Within increasingly volatile market conditions, the strength and consistency of used operations are crucial. To ensure this, more support for the used EV sector is needed to put the brakes on rapid pace of depreciation. Now, what's needed is the ZEV mandate to be stopped, to integrate EV sales into ICE sales organically to people who want to buy them. When people want to buy them and you're not creating an excess of vehicles that people don't want, the cars will hold the prices. No need for any stimulus. As far as giving grants to used buyers, I will tell you what will happen now. whatever the grant is, the dealers will just put the cars up. So nobody's saving anything. All that's happening is the taxpayer's bailing them out. People who don't want EVs, which is the majority of people, are helping to pay for some person's EV. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.